The letter trembled in my hands, its crisp edges suddenly feeling like razor blades against my skin. I read the words again, hoping they'd somehow rearrange themselves into something less devastating. They didn't. "Richard, my love," it began. My husband's name, followed by an endearment that wasn't mine to give. I sank onto the edge of our bed, the same bed where Richard and I had made love, shared dreams, and created our beautiful daughter, Lily. Now it felt tainted, as if the secrets hidden within its folds were seeping out to suffocate me. A knock at the door jolted me from my spiral. "Mom?" Lily's voice called out. "Are you okay?" I hastily shoved the letter under a pillow and tried to compose myself. "Come in, sweetie," I managed, forcing a smile as she entered. Lily, all gangly limbs and curious eyes at 14, hesitated in the doorway. "Dad said he's working late again tonight. Can we order pizza?" The mention of Richard sent a fresh wave of nausea through me, but I nodded. "Sure, honey. Why don't you go ahead and call? Get whatever toppings you want." As Lily bounced away, phone already in hand, I retrieved the letter. My fingers itched to tear it to shreds, to burn it and pretend I'd never seen it. But I couldn't. This was evidence, proof of the growing chasm in my marriage that I'd been trying so hard to ignore. I made my way downstairs, letter tucked safely in my pocket. In the kitchen, Lily was chattering away about her day, but her words barely registered. My mind was a whirlwind of questions and accusations. "Mom?" Lily's voice cut through my thoughts. "You're not listening." I blinked, focusing on her concerned face. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I've got a lot on my mind. What were you saying?" She sighed dramatically, in that way only teenagers can. "I was asking if we could invite Grandma over this weekend. Dad's going to be out of town again, and I thought it might be fun. My mother, Grace." The thought of her steady presence was suddenly overwhelmingly appealing. "That's a great idea, Lily. Why don't you give her a call after we eat?" As if on cue, the doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of our dinner. We settled at the table, the normalcy of our routine a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. "So where's Dad going this time?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Lily shrugged, mouthful of pizza. "Dunno, some conference thing, I think. He was being all weird about it when I asked." My heart clenched. How long had this been going on? How many conferences had really been rendezvous with his mistress? "Mom?" Lily's voice was small now. "Is everything okay with you and Dad?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the worry etched in her young face. She was perceptive, my girl. Too perceptive sometimes. "We're just going through a rough patch, sweetie," I said, reaching out to squeeze her hand. "But don't worry. We'll figure it out." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue, but I couldn't bring myself to shatter her world. Not yet. After dinner, as Lily chattered away on the phone with her grandmother, I retreated to my home office. The letter felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket. I pulled it out, smoothing the creases, and began to read it again, this time looking for clues. The sound of the front door opening made me jump. Richard's voice called out, "I'm home!" Panic surged through me. I wasn't ready to face him, wasn't prepared for the confrontation that was inevitably coming. But as his footsteps approached my office, I knew I had no choice. The door swung open, and there he stood, my husband of 16 years, the father of my child, the man I thought I knew better than anyone in the world. "Sophia," he said, his brow furrowing as he took in my expression. "What's wrong?" I held up the letter, watching as recognition and then fear flashed across his face. "We need to talk, Richard," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Right now." Richard's face drained of color as he stared at the letter in my hand. "Sophia, I can explain," he stammered, but I cut him off with a sharp laugh. "Explain? How exactly do you plan to explain this, Richard?" I waved the letter in front of him. "How long has this been going on?" He closed the office door behind him, his eyes darting nervously. "It's not what you think. It's complicated." "Complicated?" I spat the word back at him. "What's complicated about betraying your wife and family?" Richard ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing. Now it just made my stomach churn. I never meant for this to happen. It just did. I stood up, anger coursing through me. "Things don't just happen, Richard. You made choices that affect all of us." A soft knock on the door interrupted us. "Mom? Dad? Is everything okay?" Lily's voice was muffled but concerned. Richard and I exchanged a panicked look. "Everything's fine, sweetie," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. Just grown-up stuff. Why don't you go finish your homework? We waited in tense silence until we heard Lily's footsteps retreat. Then Richard slumped into a chair, looking defeated. What do you want me to say, Sophia? That I'm sorry? Because I am. God, I am. I wanted to scream, to throw things, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling. Instead, I took a deep breath. I want you to tell me the truth. All of it. And so for the next hour, Richard talked. He told me about meeting her at a conference 2 years ago, about how it started as harmless flirting and spiraled into something more. He spoke of guilt and temptation, of feeling trapped and alive at the same time. With each word, I felt our marriage crumbling around me. 16 years of love, trust, and shared dreams, all reduced to ashes by his selfish choices. What about Lily? I asked when he finally fell silent. Did you ever think about what this would do to her? Richard's face crumpled. Of course I did. That's why I tried to end it several times, but it was never that simple. A horrible thought struck me. Does Lily know? Have you said anything to her? He shook his head vehemently. No, never. I wouldn't put that on her. But something in his eyes made me doubt him. I made a mental note to check Lily's phone, just in case. The thought of involving our daughter in this mess made me sick. So what happens now? I asked, suddenly feeling exhausted. Richard reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I want to make this right, Sophia. I love you. I love our family. I'll do whatever it takes. I looked at him, this man I thought I knew so well, and felt nothing but a hollow ache. I don't know if there's anything you can do to make this right, Richard. I don't even know if I want you to try. His face fell, but before he could respond, we heard a crash from upstairs, followed by Lily's panicked cry. Mom! Dad! We raced up the stairs, momentarily united in our concern for our daughter. We found Lily in the bathroom, pale and shaking, surrounded by shattered glass from a fallen mirror. I don't feel good, she mumbled, swaying on her feet. I caught her just as her knees buckled. As I cradled Lily in my arms, feeling her forehead burning with fever, I glared at Richard over her head. Call an ambulance, I ordered. He hesitated, glancing at his watch. I have an early flight tomorrow. Maybe we should just call the ambulance. My voice was ice cold. In that moment, I saw Richard for who he truly was, a selfish, unreliable man who put his own needs above his family's. As sirens wailed in the distance, I held Lily close, whispering soothing words. My mind raced with worry for my daughter and fury at my husband. One thing was clear. Our lives would never be the same after tonight. The hospital waiting room felt like a prison cell, its sterile walls closing in on me as I waited for news about Lily. Richard had left hours ago, citing his important business trip as an excuse. His absence spoke volumes about where his priorities truly lay. I clutched my phone, debating whether to call my mother, Grace. She'd know what to do, how to handle this mess. But telling her meant making it real, admitting that my perfect little family was falling apart. A doctor approached, his face unreadable. Mrs. Thompson? Your daughter is stable, but we need to run more tests. It appears to be a severe case of pneumonia. Relief washed over me, quickly followed by a new wave of worry. Can I see her? He nodded, leading me to Lily's room. She looked so small and fragile in the hospital bed, hooked up to various machines. Her eyes fluttered open as I entered. Mom? Her voice was barely a whisper. I rushed to her side, taking her hand. I'm here, sweetheart. You're going to be okay. Lily's eyes darted around the room. Where's Dad? The question felt like a knife to my heart. He had to go on his trip, honey, but he'll be back soon. The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. Lily's face fell, and I saw tears forming in her eyes. He always leaves when I need him, she mumbled. I stroked her hair, fighting back my own tears. I know, baby. I know. As Lily drifted off to sleep, I stepped out into the hallway and finally made the call I'd been dreading. Mom, it's me. I need you. Grace arrived within the hour, her familiar perfume enveloping me as she pulled me into a tight hug. Oh, Sophia, what's happened? I broke down then, telling her everything, Richard's affair, Lily's illness, his abandonment. Grace listened without judgment, her hand steady on my back. That bastard, she muttered when I finished. I always knew he wasn't good enough for you. Despite everything, I found myself defending him. He's Lily's father, Mom. He's not all bad. Grace's eyes narrowed. A good father doesn't abandon his sick child for a business trip, or cheat on his wife for that matter. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Richard. How's Lily? Sorry I had to leave. This deal could mean big things for us. Anger surged through me. I showed the message to Grace, who scoffed. Big things? Like a divorce? The word hung in the air between us. Divorce. Was that where this was heading? A nurse interrupted our tense silence. Mrs. Thompson, your daughter is asking for you. I hurried back to Lily's room, Grace close behind. Lily was sitting up, looking slightly better, but still pale. Grandma, she exclaimed weakly, managing a small smile. Grace moved to Lily's bedside, fussing over her. Oh, my sweet girl, you gave us quite a scare. As they chatted, I noticed Lily's phone on the bedside table. A notification flashed across the screen. A message from Richard. My heart raced as I remembered his hesitation when I asked if Lily knew about the affair. Without thinking, I grabbed the phone, ignoring Lily's confused, Mom? I opened the message thread, my hands shaking. What I saw made my blood run cold. Remember, Lily, not a word to your mother about what you saw. It would break her heart. I looked up, meeting Lily's wide, fearful eyes. She knew. She had known all along. Sophia? Grace's voice was concerned. What is it? I turned the phone screen towards them, watching as understanding dawned on their faces. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. Not only had Richard cheated, but he had burdened our daughter with his secret, threatening her into silence. In that moment, something inside me hardened. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about protecting Lily from her own father's selfishness. Mom, I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me, I think I'm going to need a good lawyer. The hospital discharged Lily after 3 days. Her condition improved, but still fragile. As we settled back into our home, the weight of recent revelations hung heavy in the air. Richard hadn't returned from his business trip, and I was grateful for the reprieve. I needed time to think, to plan. Grace had insisted on staying with us, her presence a comforting buffer between Lily and the turmoil threatening to engulf our family. As I tucked Lily into bed that night, her eyes met mine, brimming with unspoken questions. Mom, she began hesitantly, about Dad's messages. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. It's okay, sweetheart. You can tell me anything. Lily's words tumbled out in a rush, detailing how she'd accidentally discovered Richard's affair months ago, how he'd caught her looking at his phone and made her promise to keep quiet. The guilt and fear in her voice broke my heart. I'm so sorry, Mom, she sobbed. I wanted to tell you, but Dad said it would destroy our family. I pulled her close, my own tears falling. Oh, Lily, none of this is your fault. Your father had no right to put that burden on you. As Lily drifted off to sleep, exhausted by her confession, I slipped out of her room, my mind racing. I needed to see those messages for myself, to understand the full extent of Richard's betrayal. With trembling hands, I picked up Lily's phone from her nightstand. The passcode, her birthday, granted me access to a world I wasn't prepared for. The messages from Richard were worse than I'd imagined, manipulative, threatening, even cruel at times. He'd used our daughter's love and loyalty against her, against us both. Remember, this is our little secret. Mom doesn't need to know. If you say anything, it'll break up our family. Is that what you want? You like talking to your mother earlier. You didn't tell her anything, did you? Each message felt like a physical blow. How could the man I'd loved for so long be capable of such callousness? But it wasn't just Richard's messages that caught my attention. There were others, from names I didn't recognize, with content that made my blood run cold. Hey, Lily, got any more of those pills? My buddy's looking to buy. Your dad hooked us up last time. Can you ask him for more? My hands shook as I scrolled through message after message. The pieces started falling into place. Richard's frequent business trips, the unexplained cash I'd found hidden in his desk, his increasingly erratic behavior. This wasn't just an affair. Richard was involved in something far more dangerous, and he dragged our daughter into it. A noise from downstairs startled me. I quickly replaced Lily's phone and crept to the top of the stairs. Richard's voice drifted up, low and angry as he argued with someone on his own phone. I told you, I'll have the money soon. Just give me a few more days. No, you can't come here. My family doesn't know anything about this. I retreated to my bedroom, my mind reeling. The man downstairs was a stranger to me now, a liar, a cheater, and possibly a criminal. And he'd used our daughter as a pawn in whatever game he was playing. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. This wasn't just about saving my marriage anymore. It was about protecting Lily. It's about reclaiming our lives from the web of lies Richard had spun around us. I picked up my phone, my fingers hovering over the keypad. One call could change everything. To the police? A lawyer? My finger trembled as I made my choice and pressed dial. A sleepy voice answered on the third ring. Sophia? What's wrong? Mom, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I need your help. It's time to take action against Richard, and I think we might need to involve the authorities. As I spoke, I heard Richard's footsteps on the stairs. Time was running out. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain. I would do whatever it took to protect my daughter and uncover the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. I ended the call with my mother just as Richard's footsteps reached our bedroom door. My heart raced, but I steeled myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. When he entered, his eyes bloodshot and tie askew, I barely recognized the man I had married. Sophia, he slurred, why are you still up? I stood, my voice steadier than I felt. We need to talk, Richard, now. He stumbled towards me, reaching out, but I stepped back. What's going on? He asked, his brow furrowing. I know everything, I said, my words cutting through the tension. The affair, the threats to Lily, and whatever illegal business you're mixed up in. Richard's face paled, then twisted with anger. You've been snooping through my things? I didn't have to, I retorted. You left a trail a mile wide. How could you involve our daughter in this? He advanced on me, his eyes flashing dangerously. You don't understand. I had no choice. We needed the money. Money? I interrupted, incredulous. What about our family? What about Lily's safety? Richard's demeanor suddenly changed, his voice taking on a pleading tone. I can explain everything, Sophia. Just give me a chance. But I was done listening to his lies. No, Richard, I've given you chances. I've given you years. It's over. His face contorted with rage. You can't do this to me. You have no idea what you're dealing with. As he lunged towards me, I stumbled backwards, knocking over a lamp. The crash echoed through the house, followed by the sound of running footsteps. Lily appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide with fear. Mom? Dad? What's happening? Richard froze, the anger draining from his face. Lily, sweetie, go back to bed. Everything's fine. But Lily stood her ground, her gaze shifting between us. No, it's not fine. I heard you yelling. I saw the messages, Dad. I know what you've been doing. The room fell silent, the weight of Lily's words hanging in the air. Richard's shoulders slumped in defeat. I never meant for any of this to happen, he mumbled. I moved to stand beside Lily, placing a protective arm around her shoulders. It's too late for excuses, Richard. We're leaving. Tonight. His head snapped up, panic clear in his eyes. You can't leave. It's not safe. The people I'm involved with are exactly why we need to go, I finished for him. We're not part of whatever mess you've created. As if on cue, Grace appeared behind Lily, car keys in hand. The bags are in the car, she said, her voice firm. Let's go, girls. Richard made one last desperate attempt. Sophia, please. If you leave now, I'll lose everything. I met his gaze, feeling a mixture of pity and resolve. You already have, Richard. You lost us the moment you chose your secrets over your family. With that, I guided Lily out of the room, Grace following close behind. As we descended the stairs, I heard Richard's broken sobs echoing through the house we once called home. Outside, the cool night air hit my face, bringing with it a sense of both fear and freedom. As we climbed into Grace's car, Lily's small voice broke the silence. Mom, where are we going? I turned to look at my daughter, seeing the trust and uncertainty in her eyes. In that moment, I made a decision that would shape our future. Somewhere safe, sweetheart. Somewhere we can start over. As Grace pulled away from the curb, I watched our house disappear in the rearview mirror. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with potential dangers from Richard's mysterious associates. But one thing was clear. There was no going back. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, free from the web of lies that had entangled us for too long. With a deep breath, I turned to face forward, ready to embrace whatever the future held for us. The address on the crumpled paper felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket as I stood outside the nondescript apartment building. My heart raced, but I steeled myself. This was it. The moment I'd confront Richard's mistress and unravel the last threads of his web of lies. I'd left Lily with Grace. telling them I needed to run some errands. They didn't need to know the risks I was taking. As I climbed the stairs, my mind flashed back to the conversation I'd overheard between Richard and his mysterious associates. Whatever he was involved in, it was dangerous, and I needed answers. I knocked on the door, my knuckles white with tension. A moment later, it swung open, revealing a woman I recognized from a photo on Richard's phone. She was younger than me, beautiful in a way that made my stomach churn with insecurity. "Can I help you?" she asked, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Are you Amanda?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Her eyes widened in recognition. "You're Sophia, aren't you? Richard's wife." I nodded, pushing past her into the apartment. "We need to talk." Amanda closed the door, her face a mix of guilt and defiance. "Look, I know what you must think of me." "I'm not here to judge you," I interrupted. "I'm here for the truth. About Richard, about whatever illegal business he's mixed up in, all of it." She paled, sinking onto the couch. "How much do you know?" "Enough to know that my family is in danger," I said, my voice hard. "Richard's been threatening our daughter to keep quiet, and now there are people after him, after us." Amanda's eyes filled with tears. "I never meant for any of this to happen. Richard told me he was separated, that you knew about us. By the time I realized the truth, I was in too deep." "What do you mean, too deep?" I pressed. She took a shaky breath. "Richard, he's not who you think he is. The business trips, the late nights, it was all a cover. He's been moving drugs, laundering money. I didn't know at first, but when I found out—" "He threatened you too," I finished, the pieces falling into place. Amanda nodded, wiping away tears. "He said if I told anyone, he'd make sure I went down with him, but that's not the worst of it." My blood ran cold. "What do you mean? The people he's working for, they're dangerous. They think Richard's been skimming money, they're looking for him, and they don't care who gets hurt in the process." As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We know where you are. Where's Richard? You have 24 hours. I showed Amanda the message, watching the color drain from her face. "They must have followed you here," she whispered. Panic clawed at my throat. "Lily? Grace." They were alone, unprotected. "I have to go," I said, rushing towards the door. Amanda grabbed my arm. "Wait, there's something else you need to know. Richard, he's been using Lily to make some of his deliveries. She probably didn't even know what she was carrying." The world tilted on its axis. My daughter, my baby girl, unknowingly caught up in her father's criminal activities. Rage and fear battled within me. "I'm so sorry," Amanda said, her voice breaking. "I should have told someone sooner." I turned to her, my mind racing. "It's not too late. We can still fix this, but I need your help. Will you testify against Richard?" She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, it's time to end this." As we hurried out of the apartment, my phone buzzed again. Another message. "Tick-tock, Sophia. The clock is running." With Amanda by my side, I raced towards my car. We had 24 hours to find Richard, protect my family, and bring down whatever criminal enterprise he'd entangled us in. It seemed impossible, but I had no choice. Everything I loved was at stake. As I started the engine, I made a silent vow. No matter what it took, I would keep Lily safe and put an end to this nightmare once and for all. The final confrontation was coming, and I had to be ready. The clock was ticking as Amanda and I raced back to my mother's house. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Every second felt like an eternity, knowing Lily and Grace were in danger. "We need to call the police," Amanda said, her voice trembling. I shook my head. "Not yet. If we do, Richard might run, or worse, those criminals might hurt my family. We need to find him first." As we pulled up to the house, I saw Richard's car parked haphazardly in the driveway. My heart leaped into my throat. He was here. "Stay in the car," I ordered Amanda. "If anything happens, call 911. I burst through the front door, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The scene that greeted me was chaos. Richard stood in the living room, wild-eyed and desperate, facing off against my mother, who stood protectively in front of Lily. "Richard," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "It's over. Step away from them." He whirled to face me, his expression a mix of anger and fear. "Sophia, where have you been? They're coming for us. We need to leave now." "No, Richard," I replied, moving slowly towards Lily and Grace. "You need to turn yourself in. It's the only way to keep our family safe." his face contorted with rage. "You don't understand. I did all of this for us, for our future." "By putting our daughter in danger?" I shot back. "By using her as a drug mule?" Lily gasped, her eyes wide with shock. "Dad, is that true?" Richard's anger crumbled, replaced by shame. "Lily, I never meant for you to get involved. I thought I could protect you." "Protect her?" Grace interjected, her voice sharp. "You've done nothing but endanger her and this entire family." As if on cue, the sound of screeching tires filled the air. Through the window, I saw 2 black SUVs pull up, men in dark clothing pouring out. "They're here," Richard whispered, panic etched on his face. In that moment, everything seemed to move in slow motion. I grabbed Lily and pushed her towards the back door. "Mom, take Lily and run! Now!" Grace didn't hesitate, ushering Lily out as the front door burst open. 3 men entered, their eyes cold and calculating. Well, the leader sneered, his gaze fixed on Richard. "Thought you could hide from us, did you?" Richard stumbled backward, his bravado evaporating. "I can explain. I have your money. Just give me more time." The man laughed, a chilling sound. "Time's up, Richard. And look, you've brought your whole family into this mess. How thoughtful." I stepped forward, placing myself between the men and Richard. "This ends now. You want your money? Fine, but you leave my family out of this." The leader raised an eyebrow, amused. "And who might you be?" "I'm the woman who's about to bring your whole operation down," I said, my voice steady despite my pounding heart. I pulled out my phone, showing them the screen. "I've been recording everything. One press of this button, and it all goes to the police." The room fell silent, tension thick in the air. I could feel Richard's eyes boring into me, a mix of fear and awe on his face. The leader's amusement faded, replaced by cold calculation. "You're bluffing." "Try me," I challenged. "I have nothing left to lose. But you have everything to lose." As we stood in this tense standoff, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder by the second. Amanda must have called the police after all. The leader's eyes darted between me, Richard, and the window. I could see the wheels turning in his head, weighing his options. In that moment, with the police approaching and criminals at my doorstep, I realized the true strength within me. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore, but for Lily, for our future. Whatever happened next, I knew I had the courage to face it head on. The leader made his decision, reaching slowly into his jacket. My breath caught in my throat as I waited to see what he would pull out. A gun or a white flag. The fate of my family hung in the balance, and I steeled myself for whatever came next. The leader's hand emerged from his jacket, not with a gun but a flash drive. "This contains everything," he said, his voice tight. "All of Richard's dealings, our operation, everything. It's yours." As sirens wailed closer, the men retreated, leaving us in stunned silence. Richard collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands. "Sophia, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." I felt nothing but cold determination as I looked at the man I once loved. "Save it, Richard. It's over." The next few hours passed in a blur of police statements and tearful reunions with Lily and Grace. Amanda's testimony, combined with the evidence on the flash drive, was enough to bring down Richard and the entire drug operation. As dawn broke, I sat on the porch of my mother's house, exhausted but relieved. Grace joined me, wrapping a comforting arm around my shoulders. "You did it, sweetheart," she said softly. "You protected your family." I leaned into her embrace, finally allowing myself to feel the weight of everything that had happened. "I just wish I had seen it sooner, Mom. I feel like I failed Lily." Grace shook her head firmly. "You didn't fail anyone, Sophia. You showed incredible strength and courage. Lily is lucky to have you as her mother." As if summoned by our conversation, Lily appeared in the doorway, her eyes red-rimmed but clear. "Mom, can I join you?" I opened my arms, and she rushed into them, burying her face in my shoulder. "I'm so proud of you, baby," I whispered, stroking her hair. Lily pulled back, her expression serious. "What happens now? With Dad, I mean." I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "Your father made some very bad choices, Lily. He's going to have to face the consequences of those choices. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love you." She nodded, her eyes welling with tears. "And us? What happens to us?" I squeezed her hand, including Grace in my gaze. "We start over, together. It won't be easy, but we have each other, and that's what matters most." As the sun rose higher, casting a warm glow over the yard, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, I felt hope. Weeks turned into months, and slowly we began to rebuild our lives. I threw myself into my teaching, finding renewed passion in empowering young minds. Lily, with the help of therapy and our unwavering support, began to heal from the trauma of her father's betrayal. Richard, true to form, tried to reconcile once the dust had settled. He called, sent letters, even showed up at the house once, but each time I stood firm in my resolve. "We're done, Richard," I told him during his last attempt. "I've forgiven you for my own peace, but there's no going back. Lily and I deserve better." As I closed the door on him for the last time, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. We were free. One evening, as Lily and I sat on the porch swing, she turned to me with a smile that reminded me so much of her younger self. "Mom, I've been thinking. I want to volunteer at the women's shelter downtown. After everything we've been through, I want to help other families who might be struggling." Pride swelled in my chest. "That's a wonderful idea, sweetheart. We can look into it together." As we sat there, planning for the future, I marveled at how far we'd come. The pain and betrayal we'd endured had forged us into stronger, more compassionate versions of ourselves. I looked at my daughter, this remarkable young woman who had faced unimaginable challenges with grace and resilience, and I knew that whatever life threw our way, we would face it together. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. As darkness fell, I felt not fear, but anticipation for the dawn to come. Our story wasn't over. It was just beginning, and this time we were writing it on our own terms.